It was my daughter Emily's 45th birthday, and I had arrived at her house early, clutching the cake I'd ordered specially from her favorite bakery in Cincinnati. It cost $200, a small fortune for me, but for my only child, nothing was ever too expensive. I knocked on the grand oak door of her suburban home, a smile fixed on my face, expecting to see her eyes light up the way they did when she was a little girl unwrapping a new doll. But when she opened it, her expression was one of pure, unadulterated annoyance. "Oh, it's you," she muttered, her gaze flickering past me as if I were a delivery person she wasn't expecting. "Happy birthday, my love," I said, holding out the elaborate chocolate strawberry cake, the candles already nestled in the frosting. "I brought your favorite, just like when you were a kid." Emily sighed, a deep, theatrical sound that suggested my presence was an unbearable burden. "Mom, we need to talk," she said dryly, stepping aside to let me in without so much as a thank you for the cake. We sat in the formal living room of her beautiful home, a house I had almost entirely financed when she and David got married. The down payment had been $150,000, a sum I'd pulled from the life savings I had painstakingly accumulated, penny by penny, working double shifts as a registered nurse for 40 years. "You know, Mom," Emily began, her voice possessing a cold, clinical edge she had developed over the past few years. "I've been thinking a lot about my birthday, about presents, and about what would truly make me happy." I nodded enthusiastically, my heart swelling with the familiar desire to give her the world. "Of course, my love. Tell me what you want, and I'll get it for you. A trip? Some jewelry? Maybe that new hybrid SUV you mentioned?" Emily looked me straight in the eye then, and what I saw there chilled me to the bone. It wasn't just annoyance, it was pure, unbridled contempt. "The one thing I'd love most as a birthday present," she said slowly, savoring each syllable like a fine wine, "is for you to just drop dead." The world stopped. I literally felt my heart shatter in my chest, the sound of it echoing in the sudden roaring silence of my mind. Her words, those monstrous, unthinkable words, played on an endless loop. My daughter. My own daughter. My Emily. She had wished for my death as a birthday gift. What did you just say?" I managed to whisper, the tears already welling, blurring the image of the cruel stranger sitting before me. "You heard me," she continued, her coldness a physical thing, like knives slicing through me. "I'm tired of you, Mom. Tired of your constant calls, your unexpected visits, of you always being here, bothering me. My life would be so much easier, so much happier, if you would just disappear." My hands were shaking uncontrollably, rattling the cake box. 72 years of living, 45 years of being her mother, and I never, not in my wildest, most terrifying nightmares, thought I would hear those words come from her mouth. "Emily," I managed to say between sobs, "I'm your mother. I've given you everything. I've sacrificed everything for you." "Exactly," she interrupted, rising from the plush sofa. "And that's why you're suffocating me. I can't breathe with your constant presence. I need freedom. I need you to let me live my life without your drama and your bottomless emotional needs." The $200 cake was still in my hands, its festive candles beginning to wilt. Everything I had dreamed for that day, hugs, laughter, perhaps a family dinner, vanished like smoke in a hurricane. "But honey," I tried one last time, my voice pathetic and pleading, "I just want to be close to you, to be a part of your life. You're all I have." "And that's exactly the problem," she replied, crossing her arms, her posture a fortress of defiance. The fact that I'm all you have. Go get a life of your own and leave me alone. I got up from the sofa, my legs trembling, carrying the cake that now felt like a leaden mockery. I can't believe you're saying this to me, I murmured, after everything I've done for you. Everything you've done? She laughed, a short, sharp, sarcastic bark. Mom, everything you've done has been for your own benefit, to feel needed, to have control over my life. But I'm not a little girl anymore. I walked toward the door, each step costing me years of my life. As I reached the threshold, I turned for one last look, hoping, praying, to see a flicker of regret in her eyes, some sign of the sweet little girl she once was. But I only saw impatience for me to leave so she could finally celebrate her birthday without the nuisance I represented. Happy birthday, Emily, I murmured, and walked out of that house, closing the door behind me. I didn't know at that moment that it would be the last time I would ever enter that house as the mother who had sacrificed everything. Because what my daughter didn't know was that she had just awakened something in me that had been dormant for decades. A spine of steel. I made it back to my small apartment with legs that felt like jelly and a heart that was a gaping, bleeding wound. The $200 cake ended up in the trash, its melted candles a perfect reflection of the tears that wouldn't stop falling. I collapsed onto my old sofa, the same sofa where I had nursed Emily as a baby, where I had read her bedtime stories for years, where I had cried tears of joy every time she called me Mom. How had I ended up here? How could my own daughter, the child I had carried in my womb for 9 months, wish for my death with such chilling indifference? My mind began to rewind, replaying every sacrifice, every check I'd written, every personal dream I'd deferred for her. When she was 3 and came down with a severe case of pneumonia, I worked triple shifts at the Cincinnati hospital to pay for her medicine. It was $1,200 in antibiotics my insurance wouldn't cover, money I got from selling my late mother's gold locket. When she turned 16 and was desperate to go to the prom, I worked entire weekends for 4 months to buy her that pink designer dress that cost $800. I still remembered how her eyes sparkled when she tried it on. "Thank you, Mom. You're the best in the world," she had said, hugging me tight. In college, when she changed her major for the 3rd time, I paid for every single semester without a word of complaint. $42,000 in total, money I got by taking out a second mortgage on my own modest house. "Don't worry, honey," I would tell her every time she called me crying about her classes. "Your education is the most important thing." When she married David, I organized and paid for the entire wedding, $35,000, so she could have the fairy tale day she'd always dreamed of. The most elegant ballroom in the city, the most beautiful flowers, the gourmet menu she chose without a single thought to the price. "I want my princess to have everything," I told her as I signed check after check. And then came the house, that very house where she had just so casually and cruelly disemboweled my heart. When Emily and David decided they wanted to buy their first property, I didn't hesitate. "Don't worry about the down payment," I told them. "I'll take care of it." It was $150,000 from my life savings, the money I had been carefully setting aside for my own retirement. But it didn't end there. When the twins, Jack and Ava, arrived 5 years ago, I became the free, on-call babysitter. Every night, Emily wanted to go out with David. Every time they had plans and needed someone to watch the kids, there I was, not charging a single cent, just happy to help my daughter have the life she had always dreamed of. When David lost his job as an architect last year, who paid their mortgage for 8 agonizing months? Me. $16,000 that I took from my pension, money that meant I was eating rice and beans for weeks on end just to stretch my own income. and when the twins needed braces, another $4,000 that I covered without a second thought. "Don't worry," I told them, seeing their distressed faces. "That's what grandparents are for." If my story of betrayal and sacrifice resonates with you, and if you believe in the power of finding one's strength, please take a moment to support Aunt Millie's tales. Liking this video, leaving a comment with your thoughts, and subscribing to the channel helps us share more stories like this with the world. Your support means everything. Thank you. Now, back to that devastating night. Fueled by a new, cold clarity, I got up from the sofa and went to my old wooden desk, where I kept all the receipts, all the proof of every single penny I had spent on my daughter and her family. They were in boxes, files of documents that I had kept not out of mistrust, but because it made me proud to remember everything I had been able to do for them. I started doing the math, raising Emily from birth until she was on her own, approximately $200,000. College, $42,000. The wedding, $35,000. The down payment on the house, $150,000. The mortgage payments when David was unemployed, $16,000. The twins' braces, $4,000. The endless birthday and Christmas gifts over all those years, at least another $10,000. The total was devastating. A monument to my own foolishness. Over $460,000. Almost $500,000 that I had invested in my daughter's happiness. And all of it to hear that her greatest desire was for me to die. Tears of rage, not sorrow, fell onto the papers as I added and subtracted. If I had put that money into a simple savings account with compound interest, today I would have more than $600,000. I could be living in a beautiful home, traveling the world, enjoying a comfortable, worry-free retirement instead of counting pennies in this tiny apartment. But no, I had chosen to invest in love. I had chosen to believe that the money spent on my daughter was money well spent, that every sacrifice was worth it because, in the end, I would have a daughter who loved me and would take care of me in my old age. How utterly, tragically foolish I had been. I picked up the phone and dialed Emily's number. I needed to hear her voice one more time. I needed to confirm that she had really meant those terrible words, that it wasn't some horrible, cruel misunderstanding. "What do you want now, Mom?" she answered, her voice dripping with annoyance after the fifth ring. "Emily, I need to know if you really meant what you said to me today," I asked, my own voice trembling. "Of course I meant it," she replied without a hint of remorse. "Mom, it's time for you to understand that I need space. Your obsession with me isn't healthy." "Obsession?" I repeated, incredulous. "You call a mother's love obsession?" "Yes, exactly that. And I hope that after today, you finally get the message. I need you to respect my boundaries and let me live my life." I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. There was no misunderstanding. My daughter truly believed that my love was a burden, that my presence in her life was a problem she needed to solve. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, remembering every beautiful moment we had shared, every hug, every "I love you, Mom" that had come from her lips. Had it all been a lie? Or had I simply raised a daughter who had become so profoundly selfish that she couldn't see beyond her own needs? At 3 o'clock in the morning, something inside me shifted. The deep, agonizing sadness began to transform, crystallizing into something else, something harder and sharper. Pure, cold anger. Indignation. The clear, unshakable understanding that I had been used, manipulated, and discarded like a used tissue. My daughter wanted me to die. Well, Maybe it was time to give her exactly what she asked for. The next day, I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't experienced in years. The sadness had given way to something far more powerful: determination. If my daughter wanted me to disappear from her life, I would, but not in the way she expected. I put on my best clothes, a tailored blazer and slacks I hadn't worn in years, and went out with a defined, singular purpose. First stop: the bank where I had a joint emergency account with Emily for her house expenses. An account I had opened just in case, and into which I had deposited $20,000 for any unforeseen events that might arise. "Good morning, Mrs. Vance," greeted the manager, Mr. Martinez, who had known me for years. "How can I help you today?" "I want to close joint account number 458728891. I said with a smile that he interpreted as kindness, but which was, in reality, pure vengeance. "Are you sure?" "That account has a considerable balance of $20,000, he warned, checking his computer screen. "Completely sure. I want to transfer all of that money to my personal account," I replied, signing the papers with a steady, resolute hand. Seeing those $20,000 return to my sole control gave me a jolt of satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. It was only the beginning. Next stop: the mortgage loan office. During the past year, when David was unemployed, I had co-signed their mortgage. That meant that if they couldn't pay, the responsibility fell on me. But it also meant that I had rights to that property. "Mrs. Vance?" The loan officer, a Miss Williams, greeted me. "What brings you here?" "I want to review the mortgage contract where I appear as a co-signer," I explained. "I need to understand exactly what my rights and obligations are." While she looked for the documents, I remembered the day I signed those papers. Emily had cried with emotion. "Thank you, Mom. I don't know what we'd do without you. You're our savior," she had said, hugging me tight. David had also thanked me profusely, promising me they would never have late payments. "Here are the documents," Ms. Williams said, placing a thick folder in front of me. "As a co-signer, you are responsible for the payments if the primary holders cannot make them. But you also have the right to reclaim the property if you believe the debtors won't be able to fulfill their obligations." "Exactly," I said, my eyes scanning the fine print. "Is there a problem with the payments?" she asked, with professional concern. "I'm evaluating the situation," I replied, putting a copy of all the documents in my bag. "What would I have to do if I decided to exercise my rights as co-signer?" "You would have to demonstrate that there's a risk of default, or that there have already been significant delays. In your case, I see that you covered 8 months of payments last year, which is already sufficient evidence that the primary holders lack financial stability." "Perfect." David had lost his job again last week, information Emily had casually given me, not thinking about the implications. She thought she was laying the groundwork to ask for help, but what she was really giving me were the weapons for my revolution. I left that office with a grim smile. My dear daughter had no idea of the storm that was brewing. Third stop: my personal lawyer, Mr. Arthur Anderson, a 70-year-old man who had been a friend of my late husband. He knew my entire family situation and had witnessed my sacrifices for Emily for decades. "Eleanor," he greeted me warmly. "What brings you to my office?" "It's not common to see you here." "Arthur, I need your help with something very important," I told him, sitting in the leather chair across from his mahogany desk. "I want to completely change my will." His eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Has something happened with Emily?" I told him everything. Every hurtful word, every moment of contempt, the coldness with which she had wished for my death on her own birthday. Arthur listened in silence, his expression becoming more and more serious with each detail. "Eleanor," he said finally, his voice full of compassion, "I am so sorry for what you're going through. I never thought Emily was capable of something like that, after everything you've done for her." "Me neither," I sighed. "But I've made my decision. I want to change my will and leave everything to a charitable organization, the Orphans Foundation, where I volunteer. I also want to set up a trust fund for my grandchildren, but Emily can't have access to that money until they turn 25. "That can be done," Arthur nodded, taking notes. "Do you also want to change the beneficiaries of your life insurance?" "Of course. Anything with Emily's name on it, I want it changed. My daughter wants me to die, but when I do, she's not going to receive a single penny from me." We spent 2 hours reviewing all my legal documents. My $100,000 life insurance policy, my savings, my apartment, my investments. Everything that had once been designated for Emily would now go to the foundation. "There's something else," I said as we were finishing. "I want you to prepare all the documents to reclaim the house where Emily lives. As the co-signer of the mortgage, I have rights, and her husband just lost his job again." Arthur's eyes lit up with understanding. "Now I see where you're going with all of this. Are you sure you want to go that far?" "Completely sure," I replied, with a determination that surprised even myself. "My daughter told me her life would be easier if I disappeared. Well, I'm going to disappear. But first, I'm going to make sure she understands exactly what it means to live without me, and without everything I've provided for her." When I left Arthur's office, it was already dark. I walked through the streets of my neighborhood, feeling renewed, as if I had woken up from a very long, very bad dream. For 45 years, I had lived for Emily. I had sacrificed my own dreams and desires to give her everything she wanted, but no more. I got back to my apartment and poured myself a glass of wine, something I hadn't done in years. Toasting myself was something completely new, but it felt incredibly liberating. I took out my phone and dialed a number I had saved months ago but had never dared to use. It was for a travel agency specializing in retirees that offered packages for living abroad. "Good evening, this is Eleanor Vance," I said when they answered. "I saw your promotion about living in Geneva, Switzerland. Could you send me complete information?" "Of course, Mrs. Vance. Switzerland is a very popular destination among our clients. We have several programs, from temporary stays to permanent residency. What kind of information do you need?" "Everything," I replied without hesitation. "I want to know everything about how a 72-year-old woman can start a new life in Switzerland." After hanging up, I stood at the window, looking out at the city where I had lived my entire life. Soon, all of this would be just a memory. My daughter had asked for my disappearance as a birthday gift, and I was going to grant it to her in the most spectacular way possible. What Emily didn't know was that her wish was about to become her worst nightmare. The next few days were a whirlwind of secret preparations. Every morning, I woke up with a mix of pain and righteous determination that pushed me forward. It was as if I had woken from a long slumber, where I had lived only to please my daughter. And now, finally, I was living for myself. On Wednesday morning, my phone rang. It was Emily. For a moment, my heart sped up, a foolish flicker of hope that maybe she had reconsidered, that she might apologize.
How naive I still was. "Mom," she said in that cold, transactional voice, "I need you to do me a favor." Not even a hello or how are you. She went straight to the point, as if I were her personal assistant. "What do you need?" I asked, curious to see how far her audacity would go. "The twins have a presentation at school on Friday, and David and I have an important work dinner. Could you watch them that night? The irony was so thick it was almost suffocating. The same woman who had wished for my death was now asking me to babysit her children, as if nothing had happened. I can't, I replied simply. There was a pause. What do you mean you can't? She asked, with genuine surprise. She wasn't used to me saying no. I have other plans, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. What plans could you possibly have? She asked, her tone dripping with condescension, as if at 72 years old I had no right to a life of my own. Plans that are none of your business, I replied, my voice calm and steady. Find another sitter. But Mom, I can't get a sitter on such short notice. Besides, since when do you charge me to watch your own grandchildren? There it was, the emotional manipulation she had wielded for years. But this time, it wouldn't work. Since you told me that your greatest gift would be for me to die, I answered, my voice as cold as ice. If you want me to disappear from your life, I'm starting now. There was a long silence. Finally, Emily let out a sarcastic laugh. Seriously? You're going to punish me like you're a little brat? I thought after a few days the drama would be over. It's not drama, Emily. It's respect for your wish. You wanted me to disappear, so that's what I'll do. Fine, she snapped. If you want to be that childish, that's on you. But don't come crying to me later when you're lonely. She hung up. Perfect. Every interaction confirmed I was making the right decision. That afternoon, I went to the bank again, this time to do something I never thought I would: withdraw most of my savings in cash. It was $30,000 that I put in a large envelope and stored in my personal safe, the seed money for my new life. I also called the travel agency and confirmed my trip, a one-way flight to Geneva for the following Tuesday. The initial cost was $5,000, money I paid without blinking. It was the most expensive and most intelligent investment I had made in years. On Thursday morning, I received an unexpected visit from my neighbor Evelyn, a 68-year-old retired teacher with whom I had developed a close friendship. Eleanor, she said, sitting in my living room with a cup of coffee, you look different these days? Lighter. Has something happened? Evelyn had been a silent witness to all my sacrifices. She had seen me cancel plans with her to rush over whenever Emily needed me. She had seen the bags of expensive organic groceries I would buy for Emily's family while I ate canned soup to save money. I told her everything, every painful detail, and also all the plans I had been making. My God, Eleanor, Evelyn murmured, her eyes filled with tears. I can't believe Emily would say something so cruel. The worst part, Evelyn, is that she said it as if it were the most normal thing in the world. And you're really going to Switzerland? Yes, I replied firmly. I've already bought the ticket. I'm leaving on Tuesday. Evelyn took my hands. You know you have my full support. What Emily did is unforgivable. There's something else, I said, lowering my voice. I'm going to need your help with something very important. I explained my complete plan, how I wanted Emily to believe I had truly disappeared, at least for a while. Evelyn would be my accomplice. It's brilliant, Evelyn murmured, a mischievous smile spreading across her face. That ungrateful child is finally going to understand what it means to lose you. Will you help me? Of course I will. In fact, I think it's exactly what Emily needs to wake up. That night, I worked on the most important letter of my life, the letter that Evelyn would place on Emily's table, and that would change everything. I wrote and rewrote every word. My dear Emily, it began, you asked me, as a birthday gift, to disappear from your life. I have decided to grant your wish. When you read this, I will already be far from here, starting the life I should have lived years ago instead of sacrificing it all for you. I wrote for hours, documenting every penny, every sacrifice, every opportunity I had missed by always being available for her. But it wasn't a bitter letter. It was an educational one. Along with this letter, I continued, you will find all the legal documents I have signed this week. The change of will, the cancellation of your health insurance that I paid for, the notification that as the co-signer of your mortgage, I have decided to exercise my rights due to David's job instability.
And the cancellation of all financial benefits you received from me. It was a 23-page letter that meticulously detailed everything that was going to change in her life now that I had disappeared, just as she wanted. Your life will be much easier without me, the letter ended, but it will also be much, much more expensive. I hope it's worth it. On Friday night, as I was packing, my phone rang 3 times. Emily. I let it ring. The next day, Saturday, David appeared at my door, looking exhausted and desperate. Eleanor, he pleaded. Emily told me what happened. I know what she said was wrong, but please, don't do this to our family. Do what, David? I asked, feigning innocence. Cutting us off. Just withdrawing from our lives. The kids need you. We need you. How interesting. When Emily wanted to get rid of me, I was a nuisance, but when they realized everything I did for them, suddenly they needed me. David, I said calmly, your wife was very clear. My presence is a burden. I'm just respecting her wishes. But Eleanor, you know how Emily is when she gets mad? She didn't mean it. Oh, she didn't. She sounded pretty convincing when she wished for my death as a birthday gift. David lowered his head, knowing he had no argument. Please, he insisted, give me a chance to fix this. I'll talk to her. It's too late for that, I replied, slowly closing the door. Give my grandchildren a kiss for me. Sunday was my last day in Cincinnati. I spent it walking through the places that held memories, a silent farewell to a life I had lived completely for others. On Monday, I would begin a life I would finally live for myself. At 5 a.m. on Monday, Evelyn knocked on my door as we had arranged, fresh coffee in hand. Ready for your great escape? She asked, winking. More than ready, I replied. We had planned it all. Evelyn would wait until Wednesday to go to Emily's apartment and deliver the documents, pretending she was worried about my disappearance. Remember, I said as the cab pulled up, act very concerned. Tell her you found the apartment empty and the letter on her table. Don't you worry, Eleanor. I was a drama teacher for 30 years. It's going to be the performance of my life. The cab ride to the airport was surreal. At the gate, I received 3 more calls from Emily and a text. Mom, you're being ridiculous. The kids are asking about you. Call me. I deleted it without replying. The flight to Geneva was long, but peaceful. For the first time in decades, no one knew where I was. No one could call me to ask for favors, money, or time. It was an intoxicating feeling of freedom. I arrived in Zurich on Tuesday night. A kind young man from the travel agency named Klaus met me and took me to a beautiful furnished apartment he had rented for me. It was small but cozy, overlooking a park. The next morning, I woke up early and went out to explore. I had breakfast at a charming cafe, bought fresh flowers, and spent $100 on a beautiful silk scarf, simply because I liked it. As I walked through the streets of Zurich, I calculated that it must be around 8 a.m. in Cincinnati. Evelyn would be preparing to go to Emily's apartment, letter in hand. I sat on a bench by the lake and waited, knowing that in a few hours my phone would start ringing. At 5 p.m., Zurich time, it began. It was Emily. I let it ring. It rang again. This time, I answered. Mom! She screamed, her voice cracking. Where are you? Evelyn came here with a letter. She said you've disappeared. What's going on? Hello, Emily, I replied calmly, enjoying the view of the Swiss lake. Did you read the letter yet? Yes, I read it. Are you crazy? How could you do this to us? Where are you? I'm exactly where I need to be, I replied. Far away from you, just as you wanted. But I didn't want this. I didn't want you to actually leave. I was just angry. I didn't mean it. There it was, her typical tactic, minimizing the harm, making me feel guilty for reacting to her cruelty. You didn't mean it when you told me your greatest birthday wish was for me to die? Because you sounded pretty convincing. I was just frustrated. David lost his job again. The kids are giving me problems. I shouldn't have taken it out on you. You're right. You shouldn't have. But you did. And now, there are consequences. Words can't be unsaid. But Mom, please, come back. We need you. I need you. How interesting. Now she needed me. Now that she had read the 23-page letter detailing every financial benefit she had just lost. Do you need me, Emily? Or do you need my money? I asked directly. There was a long, telling silence. I need you, she finally murmured, but her voice lacked conviction. Emily, for 45 years, I lived for you. And when I finally needed to feel valued, you told me you'd rather I was dead. Those words broke my heart in a way that can never be fixed. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Sorry is not enough. But you know what? Maybe it was the best thing you could have said to me. Because it finally opened my eyes. What do you mean? I mean that for the first time in decades, I am living for me. And it feels wonderful. Where are you? Please tell me, she begged, her voice choked with tears. The kids are asking about their grandma. The kids will be fine, I replied, looking at the distant mountains. They will learn that actions have consequences. But what if something happens to you? What if you get sick? She cried. Now she was worried. How convenient. Emily, in the last 5 years, I've had 3 hypertensive episodes that sent me to the hospital. Do you know how many times you visited me? None. The first time, you had a hair appointment. The second, it was David's birthday. The third time, you simply didn't answer your phone. So, don't come to me now with concerns about my health. The silence on the other end confirmed she remembered. I thought it wasn't serious, she stammered. Of course. Because my health was never a priority for you, but my checks were. It's not about the money, she screamed. It's about you. I miss you. Do you miss me, or do you miss having someone available 24/7 to solve your problems? I hung up the phone. It rang again, but this time I turned it off. The next day, I turned my phone on to find 47 missed calls and 23 texts. They evolved from pleading, "Please, Mom, we're so worried," to panic. The bank called us. You canceled the joint account. How are we going to pay for emergencies? To outright fury. The mortgage lawyer called. He says you can take our house. It was beautiful to see how the concern for my well-being quickly turned into panic over the financial implications of my absence. I replied to just one text. I am fine. I am exactly where I need to be. Do not look for me. The response was immediate. You don't understand what you're doing. You're going to ruin us. I replied, now you understand what it's worth to have me in your life. Too bad you realized it too late. That week, I met with a Swiss financial advisor, joined a hiking group, and made a new friend, Ingrid, a German woman who had a similar story of being treated like an ATM with legs by her children. Her story comforted me. I wasn't alone. 3 weeks after my arrival, my new life was taking shape. I had enrolled in German classes and a watercolor painting course. My calendar was full of activities I had chosen for myself. But the most surprising thing came in a phone call from a social worker back in Ohio. Mrs. Vance, your daughter Emily filed a complaint alleging that you may be suffering from dementia or cognitive decline and that you've made financial decisions that put you at risk. I couldn't believe it. She had stooped so low, inventing a mental illness to invalidate my decisions and force my return. "Miss Williams," I said firmly, "I assure you, I am in perfect mental health. My daughter's allegations are false. I agreed to a full evaluation at the American consulate in Zurich. The doctor, an experienced man, quickly saw the situation for what it was. Mrs. Vance," he told me after a 3-hour evaluation, "not only are you in perfect mental health, but the decisions you have made demonstrate admirable lucidity and courage. Your daughter is clearly trying to manipulate the system." He sent a detailed report to social services, closing the case and documenting Emily's false complaint. My lawyer, Arthur, informed me that Emily had also hired her own lawyer to challenge my will, alleging I wasn't of sound mind. "She won't get far," Arthur assured me. "I have recordings of all our conversations. We are now preparing a defamation lawsuit against her." My story, however, took another turn. I wrote an open letter about my experience to an online blog for older women. It went viral. I did a video interview for their YouTube channel, and thousands of women shared similar stories of emotional and financial abuse by their adult children. A week later, I received an email from David, my former son-in-law. "Eleanor," he wrote, "I saw your interview. I need you to know that I agree with you. What Emily said was unforgivable. I was a witness to her manipulation for years, but never had the courage to confront her because we were so dependent on your financial help. The kids miss you. Emily told them you're sick, but I believe they deserve to know the truth when they are older. I hope you are happy." I replied, "David, I appreciate your honesty, but apologies don't change the damage done. I hope you teach your children to value the people who love them before it's too late." 6 months after my arrival, my life had completely transformed. One morning, Evelyn called with news. "Eleanor, Rebecca lost the house. The bank had foreclosed. David had found a low-paying factory job, and Emily had been forced to go back to work. They were living in a small apartment across town. I didn't feel joy, but a deep satisfaction of justice. For the first time, they were facing the real consequences of their actions. A week later, Arthur called. The foreclosed house had been sold. Since I was the co-signer, I was legally entitled to recover my initial investment. "How much is that in total?" I asked. $185,000. The money will be in your Swiss account next week." A few days later, he called again. My old apartment in Cincinnati had sold. Another $95,000. In total, I was receiving almost $300,000. At 72, with my other savings and investments, my net worth now exceeded $500,000. I was richer than I had ever been. That experience inspired me to write a book. When Love Hurts, Freeing Yourself from Family Emotional Abuse After 70. It became a bestseller in Europe. The letters I received were incredible, from women who found the courage to change their own lives. But the most impactful letter came a year later. It was from my grandchildren, now 12. "Dear Grandma Eleanor," they wrote in a child's hand, "Dad told us the truth about why you left. He told us that Mom said some very ugly things to you. We want you to know that we miss you a lot, and we understand why you left. We are proud of you for being so brave. When we are older, we would like to visit you in Switzerland. We love you, Grandma." I cried for an hour, not from sadness, but from the understanding that my decision had been the right one. I wrote back immediately, telling them the doors to my heart and my home would always be open for them when they were old enough to make their own decisions. Today, 3 years after that terrible birthday, I am 75 years old. I am sitting on my balcony in Zurich, looking at the mountains, a best-selling author with assets of more than $600,000, dear friends from all over the world, and an inner peace I never thought possible. Emily asked me, as a birthday gift, to disappear from her life. I granted her that wish. What she never calculated was that by losing me, she lost not only a mother who loved her, but the person who had kept her entire financial world afloat. My disappearance was my gift to her. My new life was my gift to myself. And it was worth every tear, every sacrifice, and every moment of pain that brought me here. Because sometimes, the only way to save yourself is to have the courage to lose yourself completely, in order to be reborn as the person you were always meant to be.